cerulean blue kind of melted into the surface. So yes, there's a lot of blue. There's cobalt blues down into here. Um, but this is going to be a couple, we're going to do 2 layers on here. So again, whatever you have is fine. Whatever colors you have are fine. I also have a couple colors over here. I have some burnt umber. I have some raw umber. Again, you don't have to have those. Burnt umber, you could just use yellow ochre or raw sienna. So I'm just going to start with the raw umber, which is kind of like a gold. So we're really kind of, you know, looking at the photo. Can I put up that photo so we can all see it as we go? Here we go. I think I can. There we go. So we're not going for our darkest darks yet. I am just going to run color. I'm just kind of giving myself a roadmap. That's a little bit of the raw umber here. And then there's a lot of shifting pigment in this painting, right? We're not going to do the same thing everywhere. Watch this. I'm just going to touch a little bit of burnt sienna kind of right next to that. Maybe I'll take a little bit of brown madder. And I know I'm kind of going fast in terms of switching color, and you don't have to switch as often as I do. I just like, that was just brown madder and cobalt blue. I just like to be able to kind of give little subtle shifts in here. I'm just working on the inside rim. Maybe there's even a little more cobalt blue in there. And again, this can be whatever yours does. There's no right or wrong way of laying down this paint. It's just shifting a little bit of color in here. There we go. And because I have that masking there, and hopefully I left you guys enough time for your masking to dry. I don't know if I need to give you a few more minutes. Well, I'm just going to keep going. All right, so I got the inside of that rim. Now, if I look in here, the interior does have darker values. So I'm going to start off with some darker values in there. It's not going to be the final color, but look at that. Here's burnt sienna. I'm going to shift my light a little. Burnt sienna and cobalt blue. And it's just going to be a little deeper value. And again, because I have the masking there, I can just kind of pop that in, right? Maybe a little more cobalt blue. So what I'm looking for are just color shifts. I'm working right out of the same pool. So a little different right there. Maybe I add a little bit of ultramarine to this. Just finding other colors, and it's still working out of the same pool of paint. So look, that's brown madder and ultramarine blue. So it's almost a redder color, red violet. Just working my way over. And watch this. I'm gonna, you know how the copper pot gets that little patina on it, right? Those little pops of color. Look what cerulean blue, right? Just touched right next to that edge can do. And then I can shift back to burnt sienna. So this whole painting is kind of this process where we're just shifting our color, shifting. So here's ultramarine. Let's put a little alizarin in it. It's just a great way to discover darks. And again, this is going to dry a lot lighter. This is going to get another wash on it. There we go, right along that edge. And I just love the idea of kind of, see there, I'm shifting back to a little bit of burnt sienna. Right, so there's that shape. And that's just the first wash on that shape, and hopefully everybody can see. Just first wash. Now I'm going to go down here. I'm going to start using the exact same colors. Right here's a little burnt sienna, maybe ultramarine blue. So I'm making almost like a sepia color. It doesn't have to be dark, dark, but look at that. It's kind of a smoky brown. And again, then I can shift. You could just keep shifting your color. And it's been a fairly limited palette. Here's, again, ultramarine. Let's throw a little brown matter in it. So again, it almost goes into a purpley color. There's a little bit of light that sort of runs down through here, so I'm just using a little bit of water to soften that edge. Working this way to this way, right? I'm not jumping around. And that goes kind of back to a gold a little bit. So you could use yellow ochre, raw umber. See as it approaches the light here. And again, this is just the first wash. We're going to put another wash on top of this. And see, I can go right over top of that, which is so great. I don't have to worry about saving that light. Here's a little burnt sienna. So when I come back on these, I'm going to kind of find the same colors, but I'm just going to take them into a deeper value. I'm going to move over up into this part of the pot over here. Ultramarine and burnt sienna. Again, you can kind of find darks and just observe. It's really dark over there. Again, we're not going into our darkest darks yet, but we can see it is darker over there. And still working out of the same pool of paint. Can you see that? That's alizarin, and then I just put a little bit of, ultramarine blue. So it's almost a kind of a red violet. And I just love the variety of color. And again, back to burnt sienna. There's a lot of burnt sienna. Burnt sienna. And then it gets a little more gold. So I just observe. I say, is it warmer? Is it cooler? Is it darker? Is it lighter? Right, so there's that there. And then I can come down here. And again, I've saved all those beautiful lights. But again, I'm putting other lights close to this. And then I can come down to the bottom of this, and it is a little darker down there. So how did we make it dark? We made it with ultramarine, we made it with burnt sienna, right? Oh, there's a nice dark. And again, however you get to your darks, there we go. That's nice. So there's one pot pretty much done. First go. I'm going to move on to pot number 2. Exact same technique. So if you feel like you want to move a little quicker, you can do it. You know, if you're moving a little slower, again, remember, at any point you can quit one thing, move on to the next, and you're going to be able to pick up when you watch this at a later date. So here we go again. Same technique. I observe and I see, all right, there's warmth up here. Let's pop a little burnt sienna there. So I just love to shift my color. There's a little bit of alizarin. And then it's going to be darker on the inside, right? So how do I go darker? We're going to add a blue to one of these, right? Still working from that same pool of paint. There's a dark value, and I don't try not to do the whole thing the same color. See how beautiful it is when it shifts a little? Oh, I know what I forgot. I forgot to like pop a little cerulean on here in a couple spots. There we go. Touch it in when it's a little wet. I can do it next time too. Um, I will put a little right in here for that patina. That's on even on the inside of the pots. Let's say cobalt blue. You can even just do a blue, a deep cobalt. All right, there's that. So now we're going to move down the pot. And we can see this is very gold, right? Very gold. So yellow ochre, raw sienna. You could use quin gold in this painting. Um, so here's a beautiful gold. I just put a little cadmium red in there. So we're just kind of looking for that common color that runs in there. Maybe it has a little more red, right? And this can go right over top of this, and this does get a little deeper on the left side. If you can observe that, you see it gets much deeper over here, and because we've saved the lights with masking, we don't have to worry too much about this. There's that. And again, it gets a little burnt sienna-ish. And I just color next to color next to color. And really that's something I can show you, but it's something you can just kind of practice doing. You know, and if any place um, it got too heavy or you want to lift a light, I can just use that flat brush. And don't worry if you get blooms in here, it won't really matter. This is just the first wash on these. We're going to make these much darker. All right, here we go. Next, inside rim. It's very gold. I see a lot of gold there. And what we're doing is putting the lightest lights everywhere, right? Lightest light. And now I know that has a lot of dark in it, so I know I can go into a deeper value. Even a burnt umber. Look at the beautiful color in a burnt umber. And again, nice and juicy paint because we want to be able to lay something next to that damp edge, right, and connect another color. You know, maybe it's a little more burnt sienna here. So it's connect, connect, connect. I keep connecting to that damp edge. I'm trying to get a little clean cerulean, and I can just touch that right in there. Excuse me. And let's see, maybe back to brown matter. Again, this is up to you. It doesn't have to be exactly what I'm doing. It's just learning how to kind of get these darks going and keep connecting these shades. Oh, that's pretty. I love what that did. That was just pure burnt sienna. There's a little pop of cerulean next to it. Top of that. All right. We're going to tackle the top of this now. And again, we've saved our lights, so we don't have to worry about them too much. And we're just going to observe. Is it a little yellower over on that left side? Is it a little more golden? I think it is. I think it's got a little more gold there. So look at that. Just a big thing of gold, maybe some burnt sienna now, right next to that. And it can go right, excuse me, right over that handle. We don't have to save that handle because we know that's going to go darker. So here's a darker value, and here that was just ultramarine, again mixed with a little bit of burnt sienna. Excuse me, I got a scratchy throat. So it's much darker on the right side over here. So let's see, let's maybe go alizarin and ultramarine. right? Push it towards a red violet. Ooh, that's beautiful. Red violet, right? And you use that nice soft edge. I see some gold there. Oopsie, some gold coming down this edge here. Or yellow, whatever color you want, right? This is your um, painting. It's a little more red in here, a little more red. Some of that comes over. You really can't make a mistake in this first wash because we're just laying down kind of the common color that we see. It's nice and light there. Um, and then it does go kind of darker. Again, alizarin, ultramarine, and burnt sienna. That makes a beautiful dark. There we go. Maybe a little more burnt sienna in there. Look at this beautiful, deep, rich dark I can make coming down here. Yeah, it's dark all the way along there. I can bring some of that dark down a bit, put some of it on there. And then that can come up there. So there's there's the pots, right? Just run through them quick. That's looking pretty good. So what I want to do now is I have to dry this real quick. And what we're going to do next is we're going to do the background as a wet and wet. So, and I know this is a challenge today, guys, and I really appreciate everybody kind of sticking with me. Again, there's a lot of techniques in here. This was really, one color next to another exactly as you see it, moving, 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 right? I didn't jump around. I just kept moving it on the shape. Different size shapes, right? It's not a patchwork quilt. It's not like one box, one box, one box. It's like shift, shift, shift. This is larger, this is smaller, this is lighter, this is darker, and everything is going to dry, 30% lighter. So, all right, I'm going to take a minute. I'm going to dry this. I'm going to change my water because I should have clean water. And then I'm going to show you a wet and wet technique that is just fabulous. And we're going to get the rest of the paint on the painting in 10 minutes, right? The whole background, this whole foreground. Dry it again, and then we're going to go in, do our darks. So, all right, I'm going to mute myself for just a few minutes, and I'll be right back. I am back. Hopefully everybody got theirs dry, or hopefully you're just relaxing and watching and you can paint this after you've absorbed all of this information. And I know I throw an awful lot of information at you guys, but I try to really share as much as I can about the way I paint, but about different possibilities, right? And taking a risk, trying something you haven't tried, mixing a color combination you haven't mixed, or just not being afraid of darks, right? Or not being afraid of the water, because the water is kind of the engine that makes the paint go. So here's what I'm going to use for. Let me put the paper towels right there. This is really fun. I love this technique. So I have a spray bottle. This is all dry. So if I spray this, it's not going to lift up any of the paint that's here. It's just not going to. Now I'm going to evenly, lightly spray this, and I'm probably a foot away, and I have an atomizer, this little spray bottle, that does a nice even spray. And what I'm looking for is, I don't want puddles of water, but I just want enough that I can, and I'm, spraying kind of these areas. It doesn't matter if it goes on there though. All right, getting that on there. Just try not to overspray. It's hard to really overspray it, but don't throw a bucket of water on it or anything. Okay, so I'm still spraying it a little. And again, these Holbeins are so great because it's such a fine mist and it's a consistent mist, right? Sometimes the stuff we get at dollar stores, it's got big chunky drops, so you get extra water in some places and not enough in others. All right, so I got this, and I can always respray areas. All right, so here's the fun thing. So what I'm going to start with, I'll just do this. All right, I'm going to take a little bit of burnt sienna, and I'm using my flat brush, and you'll see why in just a minute. And again, because this is already wet, I don't want too much water in this. So now I'm just going to start to float some paint back here. And I'm just dancing across the surface. So I'm just releasing the paint into that water. And hopefully, are you guys getting a shine? Let me move this way so it's not shiny. There we go. Oh, I can't see very well, but that's okay. I don't want it shiny for you guys. All right, so floating some of that burnt sienna. Let me bring this light a little closer. I just mix it with a little teeny bit of cobalt blue, and again, just floating it. And I take my brush, and you see, I'll turn it this way, I turn it this way, just looking for a soft, right? And it's damp enough that we're not going to see any streaks. And if you do see them, they're going to disappear anyway. So look at that. Again, just floating the pigment in that water. And I can come right up to these edges because I have that nice masking fluid there. I'm just going to do the top to start. So watch what happens. I'm now going to take a little bit of my cobalt blue, little cobalt, clean cobalt, and I'm just going to start to kind of float that through here. Because what I'm trying to do is not have just a, burnt sienna background. I want it to sort of pulse with color. And you got to mix up that paint better than I did. Mine's a little, there we go. So again, varying my stroke back and forth. Maybe I'll go back to a little more burnt sienna in places, just a touch. And again, just a great way to get an interesting background in. You could certainly use a round brush to do this as well. See, I can then look at that. I can float the burnt sienna right back over top. And then I'm going to come back in and do maybe a little more cobalt, or I could do burnt sienna. Excuse me, ultramarine blue. And again, remember our surface is wet, so we don't want a whole lot of water in this mixture, right? And I do it until I get just right. And again, float it right in there. So here and there, we get a little more blue. And you could use a smaller brush. I try to use the largest brush I can. Just going to get some of it down into here too. And I haven't really mixed the colors. I've sort of been using them separately um, because I like the pulse of pigment that you get. So there's that shadow shape for that one. Now here's another fun thing. I'm going to take pure cerulean and watch. I can splatter cerulean into that background. And look at that lovely texture you get. It kind of melts in there. I can just take it and also just touch it onto that surface. And this cerulean is very, like, almost like buttery. And I'll hold this up for you, right? It's pretty thick. You know, take it right out of there. It has to be just the right consistency so it will leave your brush. There we go. Isn't that, look how beautiful that is. Just that variety of texture, warm, cool, playing against each other. And again, hopefully you can see this. It's going to dry a little different than that. But so far, so good. It is going to dry a lot lighter too. So we just have to remember that. All right, so I'm going to do the same kind of thing down here. This is starting to dry a little bit. So I'm just going to, again, lightly spray, lightly spray. So this, it's a great way. You can do it in sections, and look how quickly we got an interesting background in. And once that dries, we can put more paint right on top of it. And if you want texture, you can always take a spray bottle and spray it a little. It's probably a little too wet still, but I could get really neat texture in here too in a few minutes just with a spray bottle. All right, this is ready to go. So I'm going to use the same colors. Now it's darker. If you look at the bottom, see how dark it is here. And you can see that the bottom of the pot and where the shadow is, it's hard to even see an edge there, right? So watch what I'm going to do with this shadow shape. I'm taking it right over top of that pot and bringing it out. There we go. And now, all right, clean. I keep getting messy paint, sorry. I'm going to take a little bit of cobalt blue and watch. Float the cobalt. Just float that there. And then I can float a little bit of burnt sienna, right? And again, pulse it on here. And what happens is they then sort of mix themselves and you get these lovely colors that you can't name. And boy, do I love those kind of colors that it's hard to tell exactly what they are because they're made up of other colors. Right, here's a little more burnt sienna. And again, I'm just floating this into that wet surface. And again, it's something that can take a little time to figure out. Got a little bit of glare there, I see. I'll just show you that. Just starting to build that up nicely. And I can switch to a little bit of a smaller brush. And watch, I can just touch this burnt sienna in a couple spots. I can also splatter burnt sienna. That doesn't splatter quite as well. And I'm going to deepen this even more. So how do we make a beautiful dark? Ultramarine, burnt sienna. You could add a little bit of alizarin crimson, and that actually makes like a neutral tint. So mostly equal parts ultramarine and burnt sienna, and then just a smidge of alizarin crimson, and that makes the neutral tint that you can buy in a tube. So look at this. I'm just going to lay this right over top of this bottom edge. Bring that up a little bit. And we still haven't put our second wash on these, but I'm just getting these shadow shapes in here, and they're going to be almost done, which is pretty amazing. So bring a little more of that. I love what this is. I love the play of the blues down in here. And again, it's sort of hard to see with our masking fluid there. All right, I'm going to jump over to this because I'm very aware of time. Same thing, same color. You can use, again, burnt sienna, ultramarine, or you could use burnt umber. You know, it's pretty dark right where it leaves the pot, and it's really neat to have that lost and found edge there, especially over on this side. You can see it's much darker over there. I almost see a little bit of alizarin in there, and then it does get lighter as it gets away from the form, right? Again, floating that in there. We could even put a little bit of, little bit of raw umber, and I'm going right over top of the shadows here. That could be a little deeper. But yeah, if you observe those shadow colors, they're sort of hard to name. It's hard to tell exactly what those shadow colors are. There's a little bit of raw umber and burnt sienna. And again, we can neutralize it with a little bit of cobalt blue. So we get sort of a warm grayish color. I think I've almost got this where I want it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to dry it one more time, and we're going to tackle our next set of values. We have an hour, so we got to just deepen this over here a little. There we go. That's looking pretty good. Like that there. This looks nice. It's a little spotty back in there maybe, but I can always change that. I can always lay some more paint over there. I gotta let it dry. I'm gonna see if I can get any texture in this with the spray bottle. So again, it doesn't look like much. It looks like a bit of a hot mess. Here, let me just get some paint on that. But I promise you, it's going to start to come together. I'm going to dry this. We're going to get our next set of values in here, our dark darks on here. Then we're taking off the masking, and then I'm going to show you how we're going to start getting some really darker darks in here. This is burnt sienna, ultramarine. Again, that's kind of the go-to. It makes such beautiful dark darks. There we go. So, let me lean this because it's a little easier for me to see when I lean it. And hopefully I can just leave that photo for you guys. There we go. So I can lightly spray it. I can just put a teeny bit of water on it. Again, I'm about a foot away, and I'm just going to start to lay in some of these darks. And because it's a little damp, the paint goes on really easily. So that was just a little more burnt sienna. Next to that, I can take a little bit of, watch this, I can just float a little bit of cerulean blue right there if I want to do that. Let's see, how about brown matter? Again, I'm just switching up my colors. Brown matter, cobalt blue, just for something. There we go. Oopsie. Brown matter, cobalt blue. There we go. I'm going to put that right over this darker red on this side. There we go. And maybe back to that ultramarine and burnt sienna mixture. And again, it's whatever darks you create. We're just pushing our values a little further, and the weight of the paint, we're just pushing it a little further so we can get these beautiful darks. But again, it's not the same color the whole way through. I try to vary it. Here's a little deeper purple in here. There we go. And then I got those little pops of the cerulean kind of just touching out there, that patina color. I'm going to deepen the inside of that rim just a wee bit, just a smidge. Right, it's a little darker than that here. And again, whatever you make, we just want a little value change between that inside rim. There we go. And then maybe it gets a little redder over there. And again, you don't have to switch colors as often as I do. It's just kind of what I like to do. And I'm just going to move to some of my darkest darks again now. And some of these are larger shapes, right? We don't have to. Let's see, I want to get that even darker. So ultramarine, burnt sienna, brown, burnt umber. I just want to really, if we look under this rim, see how dark that is there? Look how beautiful that is, that dark. And then we can gradually shift it. It's a little redder in here. A little redder. I'm going to work my way across here back to maybe burnt sienna and ultramarine. Just moving it down the page a little bit. And pick what you like. It's okay to have other colors. It's perfectly okay to not use the colors that I'm using, right? There's no really rule on the way we apply this paint. The only rule is I have to finish this by 3:30. So that's about it for rules. I'm just going to lift up a little paint there. But hopefully you can see, look at how beautiful these darks are starting to get. Hopefully you can see that. So maybe just a deep yellow brown over that. Again, I'm going to let the light move through here a little bit there. It is a little more kind of deep purple over here, so doing purple on purple a bit. And I want you to just play. This is all about learning to play and learning to not be afraid, right? To try things. Try stuff that you're afraid to do. Because what's the worst that can happen, right? It's just a piece of paper. There we go. That goes all the way out there. And then it does get kind of gold as it comes towards this light here. I'll leave a little bit of this lighter. And again, I can take pure cerulean and just melt it or splatter it on that surface like it's patina, right? Because it'll melt into that. I think I'm getting carried away with my cerulean, but that's okay. Little stronger yellow here, and then boy, we can go into our beautiful darks again. So what do we do? Ultramarine, burnt sienna. Ultramarine, burnt sienna. And it comes right here. And if we just observe where that dark is, it then gets darker down in the shadow shape below. Soften that edge. Soften that edge. So here and there we go. All right, that one's done. We're going to move on to our next one. This one doesn't need quite as much. Probably can just darken the inside of this one. And again, I'm just trying to be aware of the time that we have. We still have plenty of time. Just deepening this in here. You don't want this rim as dark as the center. You know, and sometimes if you need to, you can just pop a neutral tint in there or a Payne's gray if you really want a dark. It's, again, there's really no rules. It's whatever kind of works for you. I like that. All right, our next dark, same, just pick one of the colors we've been working with, burnt sienna, ultramarine. Oopsie, dripping everywhere. Shape and value, right? Don't think copper pots, think shape and value. That dark value is there. One color next to another exactly as you see it, right? More burnt sienna running across there. It doesn't mean we have to cover all this up. There's some beautiful light on there. So I think we're just going to bring this little bit of dark across here. It's going to switch to a little bit of a smaller brush. And there's some dark here. So all we're doing is suggesting, right? We're not, it doesn't have to be exact. It's just suggesting light. It is a little deeper back in here. And then this just gets deeper here at the bottom again. So back to the standby, burnt sienna, ultramarine blue. Watch, we're just gonna bring that dark here and here. And then I can just soften this edge and let that take that up there. Oh yeah, that looks good. I like what that's doing. And then the same thing, this shadow shape kind of comes right down in there, right? And reflects on that floor in there. And again, we won't really be able to see this until we take off our masking fluid. So it's a little deceptive what we have. It's hard to tell really what we have. All right, last set of darks in here. Here we go. Same color combinations, maybe brown matter, cobalt blue, right? Which makes that beautiful deep red violet. It makes a beautiful neutrally kind of red violet, a little deeper in there. And then maybe it's a little lighter up here. That's just pure burnt sienna. Again, we're layering our values. Here's some cerulean, so I'm just going to run cerulean right over that same spot, but just make it a little bit deeper. There we go. And then maybe, again, whatever you like in terms of the darks that you have. So we're going to put a dark in behind there and behind here. Maybe a little more burnt sienna. You can see how much of this painting is burnt sienna. But it's such a great color because it has so much punch and transparency to it. I just love it. And then we can let some of this dark Come right around there. There we go. And you can always take a little cerulean and just pop it right on that surface there. Just gonna deepen this inner rim just a bit. And when I was doing this, originally this painting, like this pot might have taken hours, right? 4 or 5 hours. Because that's back when I was painting much slower. I love painting this way. I just don't do it as often anymore. Uh, and again, a little deeper. And maybe, there we go. All right, we are almost there, ladies and gentlemen. Almost to this. All right, so we're going to go darker paint here. So same combination, burnt sienna, ultramarine blue, and push that almost like a black. It's so pretty. So pretty. And I could even put some of that there. It's not a black though. It's made with beautiful transparent color. You know, here's a little, again, burnt sienna up in there. Maybe a little brown madder. Right? Just touch it on there. Working my way across. And I'm not worrying too much about all these details in there because we don't have time to think about that too much. And again, the beautiful dark that's on the bottom here. How do we get that? Maybe ultramarine and brown madder. Really pushing it dark. But not the whole shape, right? We're gonna let some of the other colors come through. There's a deep red. Did we pop a little cerulean on the top there? Right, just pure cerulean. Oops, that's an awful lot of cerulean. All right, moving over here. Something a little more golden. I'm going right over top of that handle because that doesn't really matter. It's a little bit deeper in here. And then it's a little lighter. It's a little lighter down in here. Right, just smush that color in. All right, but boy, that's really dark. I may need to lift a little light on here in a couple spots so I can just do it with my brush. Some of that light moves through there, and then some of that light moves across there. So see how I can pick that back up? That looks pretty good. And then I'm just going to deepen, again, this lost and found edge under here. Let that dark come down, soften the edge. There we go. Soften that so that comes down there. And let's see, we need this to be just a little darker under here. Just a little darker. Not a lot. Again, soften that edge. All right. Good enough for now. I'm going to dry it. We're going to take off our masking. And hopefully you can see, look at the change in value that we have now. Really beautiful, punchy values. And this is going to give us such volume in these forms. All right, I'm going to take another quick break. Sorry for all the hair drying, but this is like the speed version of Copper Pots. All right, so I'm going to mute and dry, and I'll be right back. Okay, welcome back to everybody. Hopefully, everybody got a little break. So here's the fun part. Well, it's all fun, but um, I'm gonna take off my masking, and I just do it with my fingers. Um, you could use a rubber cement pickup. I probably already told you all this. Oopsie, I forgot that little thing right there. So anyway, I just get such a kick out of taking it off because I love to see what's underneath. And I know you're going to look at it and go, "Oh my gosh, that there's no way this can work. Those edges are so hard." Oh, look, that whole thing's going to come off. Woohoo! Um, so you know it's good masking fluid when it comes off this easily, right? Um, so look at these great shadow patterns we have. Um, I like to use my hands too because I can feel where the masking fluid is. There we go. Oh, some of my edges are a little wonky, but that's okay. All right. And be careful, you can get blisters on your hands if you're not careful. Mine are pretty tough. Um, oh yeah, look at that light. Can you see the light? Oh, that's so much fun. All right. Look at that beautiful light. Look how quickly we created that luminosity. All right. And I do that because then I can feel where the masking is. Boy, I have big chunks of cerulean on here, but that's okay. Oh, I'd like to say hi to my son Wyatt, who just joined us from Bend, Oregon. Hi, Wyatt. um, Wyatt works for a wilderness therapy company out there in Bend. He's got a few days off. So both my boys are here with me, Ian in Delaware and Wyatt in Oregon. All right, so here's the painting. We got our lights there. So now they ask, how is she going to soften those darn edges? They are awful hard. Well, here's my magic toothbrush. It's just a cheap old toothbrush, flat. And I know I didn't put this in the materials list, but that's okay. Don't worry about it. You can always do this at another time or something, or don't even worry about softening your edges. But you just need an old funky dollar store toothbrush. You don't want one that has all the fancy ridges or anything. You want one that's just flat. Now you also, this is another tool that I'm going to use. This is just a hog bristle oil painting brush. It's a flat number 4. You can get any size you want. I've used 6s or 8s, but it's just a flat, and they're usually about a ½ inch long, and I just chop them off with my razor blade. Now this one is almost too worn out. That's how much I've used it, and I have a few more here. Some of them are longer, but it's all the same idea. This is like my little scrubby. So you know how you can buy one of those Fitch scrubbers or the thing from, I was going to say Trader Joe's, Cheap Joe's, you know, those little magic, whatever they're called. Um, but again, this works just great. So you just take, this is a Utrecht number 4. This is a Princeton, and I think this one's a Grumbacher. Oh, no, that's a Princeton too. Uh, the hog bristle is the best. So the natural um, fiber is the best. The acrylic stuff is not as good. It's not as stiff. What's great about doing this is not only do you have this larger area, but then you have these little edges. And I'm going to demonstrate to you. Let's see if I can demo. I'll demo on yesterday's painting. So really there's nothing we can't fix in watercolor, and you know, so many people will tell you that's not true. Once you make a mistake, you can't change anything. Well, I'm here to tell you differently. Oops, get my water back here. All right, so what does this little scrubber do? Let me get the right one. You're going to put it in the water and don't tap out the water. Keep as much water as you can. And I want to show you, I'm just going to do it right on top here. And look how I can go almost back to the white of the paper just with this little scrubby thing. Now, here's what else I can do. If I want to make a finer line, I can use the edge. And I'm going to lift that up again so you can see. Do you see how great that is? So I don't often just use it flat this way because it makes kind of a big kind of circular thing. But what's so great about it is I can come in, I can clean up an edge anywhere. I can most of the time get back to white paper unless it's like staining colors. If I have an edge again that's too hard, I can just go in and scrub. So what you want though is don't take the water out of here. You want this, we're using the water to suspend the pigment, right? So if we scrub, 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 the pigment is in that water that we just put there. So you're going to scrub a little and then you're going to lift. What you don't want to do is scrub and scrub and scrub and scrub and scrub and scrub and scrub because it destroys the paper. So scrub a bit, lift. And if there's an area that you want to scrub a little more, what you have to do is dry it first, and then you can come back and scrub. Because when we're digging into paper that's already wet is when we start to kind of destroy it and poke holes in it. Now, you have to have good paper to do this. If you're using like a Strathmore or something, it doesn't take a lot of abuse. Nothing against Strathmore, but I found the Arches, Fabriano I can do this on, Saunders a little bit, but it's just such a great tool. See, I can get rid of those edges there. I can soften any shape that looks a little too hard. This edge, and I'm going to show you, we're going to do this on our painting, but I just wanted to use yesterday's painting as an example, and whoever wins this, I'll fix all those little holes I just put on there. Sorry about that. So here we go with this one. Now I can use this little thing and spend all day. So you see what happens? I can scrub, scrub, and then I lift, scrub, and look at the beautiful luminous edges I get. Look at that, right? It feels like there's volume on this form. And I'm not real careful. You see, you just kind of smudge it in there, lift it, and move on. Right? It doesn't have to be exact. I mean, some places you might want it a little more, but then here's another thing that we can do. Watch what a toothbrush does. So here's a toothbrush. Don't borrow your family's toothbrush. So I'm going to put the toothbrush in the water. Do not shake out the water. And our tendency, every time I show this to someone, this is what they do. They take it out and then they tap. Don't tap, because this water, again, is what is going to suspend the pigment. So look how I can kind of get the light on this area, right? And I'm going to still put paint back on top of this, but look how I got that luminous light on there. And a lot of that's going to get covered up. Here, I can do that on there. Watch this. With a toothbrush, I can come in and scrub these and soften. Don't have to use a toothbrush, but it works a little better on larger areas, right? I can soften that thing there. Now, if you're using a lot of staining colors, this may not lift as well. Oh, that's really pretty. Again, I can kind of go back in there and soften. I can go over here and soften it. Again, scrub, scrub, and then lift. Don't spend too much time on any one area. So do you see how we're starting to get those luminous edges, and it doesn't take forever? And again, this is my speed version. I'm dropping water everywhere, which doesn't really matter. Just lift it up. All right, I'm going to scrub this. And I'll go back to using this little guy in some of these smaller areas. Scrub, 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 and lift, right? And you know, you have to get a dry paper towel occasionally because the paper towel gets kind of wet. So again, scrub that edge. It's just a great tool. It allows us to use masking fluid, but then still have these edges that are just, you know, beautiful, which is what we want, is a beautiful edge. Did I take that too far? I guess I did. I'm going to soften that, soften that. And you don't have to soften all of these. You could just soften a few because we're going to cover a lot of this up with paint. It's not all going to stay white. But, you know, we don't have to be neat. We can just have nice soft edges. There we go. And you know, you don't have to even do all of this. I could do a few of them. And here's the next thing. It has to be dry before we put the next layer of paint on. Okay, you can't put paint on it when it's wet this way because it's uneven everywhere. So the paper is not sure because it's got water on it. It's been scrubbed, and what the paper wants is for me to give it a quick dry, right? Oh, see, again, that light, it's already there. Do you see how close we are to, you know, getting this same kind of, and this is the exact technique that I used yesterday. Can you see that? All those edges were done, well, except for the little silly things I just put on. But that was all masking fluid. That was all white paper, and I just glazed back down over top of it in places. So how are we doing on time? 3 o'clock. All right, so I'm going to let everybody do a little bit of scrubbing if you're actually painting along. And I have to dry this one more time. And again, I apologize for all of my hair drying. My generator is going to come on, but that's okay. Nothing like living off the grid, but I'm very happy. All right. There we go. All right, I'm going to take a few minutes. I'm going to dry this, and then I'm going to show you the last step. But hopefully, do you see we've already got the volume. We've already got the glow. And now it's just, let's eliminate some of the glow. We got to tone some of it down. But again, if I turn this upside down, look at the beauty of these forms. Again, a little too outline on these edges, but I'm gonna work on that. But just so you can see what 2 layers of paint did. Look at this beautiful, beautiful luminous darks. I mean, they are glowing. They're not just flat darks. All right, so I'm gonna dry. I'll be right back. Oh, I'm glad you like it, Nishida. My friend Nishida. Oh, and I'm reading all the lovely comments. Well, thank you, Janet. I'm sorry you have to leave early too, but I'm really glad you enjoyed it. And Nishita, it is a revelation, isn't it, my friend, that you do not have to have hard edges with masking fluid, that you can get rid of those hard edges and just how powerful it can be to use it to save our lights and to give us so much freedom to lay in our other shapes and values. And look at that white of the paper. And I'm not going to touch the white of the paper here. I mean, that is our light. And this really reads as, the light coming from the back right, and casting shadows on this is the cement floor in my old studio. All right, so here we go. We're going to do our last little bit of painting, and this is really fun. It's all fun, but this is particularly fun because watch what I'm going to do. Here we go with the spray bottle again. I am going to float paint onto this, sort of wet and wet. So we don't have to just take a round brush and worry about hard edges or where we're going to start a wash. I'm just going to again take my little handy dandy Holbein spray bottle. It's a magic spray bottle. I'm going to start in this area. So I'm just going to lightly spray, and I'm about 16 inches away. You don't have to spray the whole thing at once. I'm just going to spray the area really where I'm going to start to float paint. And it's not a lot of water. So again, paper towel. I'm a lefty, so my palette's on the left. I know it sounds obvious. All right, here's this magic flat brush again, of course, which was dirty. Here is raw umber. You could use queen gold or yellow ochre. So this is damp. Watch what happens. Look at that. Oh, isn't that amazing? Right? Look how quickly I can just tone that down. And because it's damp, the paint, I can just float it on there, and it just bleeds right over top of the other pigments. You don't have to worry about any kind of a hard edge. Here, and I can take here's a little burnt sienna, and you don't want a lot of water. These aren't really darks, right? Take a little burnt sienna, push that down in places, deepen it. So look how we start to get that, again, that luminous shape in there. Let me just tone that down a little. Again, it's flat. It's damp. I'm working flat. And again, you can push pull, so I can lay that down. If I covered up something I want to have be a little lighter, look, I can take my flat brush and just lift that back up again. If we want more of that glow, flat brush. All right, so this top edge, same thing. I can just lightly spray. It was a little damp, so I could use a smaller brush. Let's put a little bit of beautiful gold. Watch this, little gold on, oops, I never did put paint there. So I'm eliminating some of the white. Let's cover that up there. Let's let some of that gold kind of come up here, maybe a little bit of almost like a dry brush, and just interrupt some of these hard edges with some pigment. So do you see how sculptural this becomes when we start to eliminate some of that white paper? Let's get rid of a little of that too. That's kind of nice in there. And again, you could leave that there, let it dry. You could lift again. What I might do too is even just lift a little edge here, because I don't have quite enough separation between those values. Let that be a little lighter, just so we can see how beautiful that dark is in there. All right, so I've deepened that. I can see I drew this wrong, but that's okay. I'm going to put some of these. All right, let me just go back to this. I'm going to spray this again. I'll spray this one. So again, I want a little bit of gold over here. yellow ochre or something. There we go, yellow ochre. And again, you don't, here we go, just soften, soften, soften. There we go. So it's not all white, but we still get that beautiful piece of light wrapping around there. And if I put too much paint on there, watch, I can just lift it back up again. Again, lightly spray it. I'm going to let some of that same yellow ochre kind of come up over that edge a little in a few spots. Tone this down. Certainly can tone down. You got to deepen these. All this could disappear. I still want to come in with my small brush and put in my really dark darks. I just haven't gotten to that yet. We still have time though. Tone that down a little bit. And again, this is just cobalt and burnt sienna, and it's a little bit damp, right? It's a teeny bit damp. So when I touch this on here, here we go. Let me just, it just melts in there just a bit. Yeah, a little bit of melting going on. Let's tone this down. Oops, that's a little bright back there. And again, I just float this paint. Just float it. Just so that's not so important back there. This edge can disappear a little bit. This edge needs to get a lot smaller. Right, so we did the first masking to save the light, and now our job is to, we need to tone down some of the light so that the light that is left is what matters, right? Because we don't need everything. We can tone that down. And for some reason I drew this wrong in there. I'm not sure why. That's got to go in there a little bit. There we go. Oh, that's looking good. Somebody says, oh, Jean loves the melting of colors. It's kind of fabulous, isn't it? So yes, soft edges. So we're eliminating, again, eliminating some of the light. So I wet it lightly with a spray bottle, and now I don't use a round brush when I'm doing this. When I am coming to this part of the painting, I lightly spray it. What would a round brush do? A round brush would have too much water in it, and a round brush is only going to make one mark for me. So what does a flat brush do? I can build shape, right? I can make shape, not just line. So I just love it. Again, I'm floating that paint on there, just floating. And again, if we don't like it, we can always lift it back up. Once this is dry, if this is dry and we see areas that we want to bring the light back on, what do? We get our little scrubby, make sure it's completely dry. We dip our scrubby in, and then we can come back and again sculpt an edge, lift a piece of light. So here's these very expensive tools that I use, a dollar store toothbrush, and this is probably a $4 or $5 brush from the arts. I mean, you could go to Michael's and get one of these, but if you can, go to Dick Blick, look for a hog bristle of some kind, and it's a flat. It's not a filbert. It's not a round. You need a flat, because what you want is that little, we want to be able to chop it off and get that beautiful little sharp edge. And again, here's a, what they pay me the big bucks for. Do not use this hard brush when it's wet, right? It's wet now. So if I tried to scrub into this in areas where it's wet, it's just going to get mucky, right? You're just going to make mud, and it's going to destroy the paper. So you're going to dry it. If you want to soften edges again, bring it back to white paper, you have to dry it completely. When it's in this stage, there's a little bit of water on it, you know, a flat watercolor brush, you can still come in and do a little bit of scrubbing. This is starting to dry a little bit, but I can lift some edges still here and there. But when in doubt, let the painting dry. That's pretty important. Um, so, all right, so I can do this. This feels really good in here now. I'm going to cover up that little piece of light. I did forget to put paint over in there. There we go. So this is looking good. That's a little hard back in there. Um, just a little solid in terms of one color. So I might let that dry before I go back in. I want a little more light on there. And again, I probably have to let that dry. And then I can come back in. And this is the part of the painting where I feel like I'm sculpting. What is the name of the Tombow markers? Is it a set? Yes, it does come in a set of like 12, and they are water-based, and it's just Tombow grayscale markers. And I believe I got mine, I think I got mine directly from Tombow. I believe they're on Amazon. So Tombow, and I think it's a set of 10 or 12. Um, so hopefully that helps. And then I also use the Prismacolor, and you can also get the Copic or Copic, C-O-P-I-C. A lot of companies make grayscale markers. They do have a brush on one end, and then here I'll show you. See, it is sort of like a brush end. So you can make fat lines, and then it has a skinny little end. So yeah, they're very nice. I like these because they make fatter lines, the Prismacolor, because the more you tend to just make lines, the more you want something that has a big chunky edge, because I only use the big end here. Oh no, that's the wrong end. I only use the fat end, when I'm doing my grayscales. Let's see if I can show it to you over some. There you go, the fat end. I only use the skinny end right at the end when I'm using my darkest darks, because you want to think shape, not line. So anyway, all right, there's that. So let me do a little more on here. And again, I can lightly spray this. Now, I also, if I don't like my background, I could make this darker, right? It's almost a little too light for me, and it's got some chicken pox. So they're a little ugly. Here, why don't I just show you? I'm just gonna lay in a little more. And again, I have the spray bottle about 16 inches away. I'll show you how I can deepen this. Here's ultramarine and burnt sienna. And again, floating the paint, floating. So you see what that little, oops, it's a little shiny for you guys here. I'm going to move my light this way. There we go. So I can deepen this. And again, the flat brush is so great because it just floats the paint in the water, and I can just spray it a little area at a time if I want it darker. I'm not sure I want it that brown. We can always certainly just go back to our cobalt blue. And you don't have to use this larger brush when you're floating it. And you can just float one area. You don't even have to do the whole thing. Watch, I'm just going to float a little. Oh, the flies are back. Just going to float a little bit of cobalt in a couple places, just so it's a little more neutral. I'll just soften that. So anyway, we can still, and because I didn't spray it with a lot of water. That's why I'm able to float that. Oh, and you're very welcome, Laurie, and thank you for coming. This is a little bit of an advanced class for watercolors, maybe not a beginner's class. I'm going to see if I can actually put together classes for people that are a little more beginners, but I think you can still learn something. Look how I can lift back in here now too, right? Or I can also be, be daring again. I could throw a little bit of cerulean, but I'm going to throw burnt sienna for some texture. You see, I can, doesn't just have to be, there we go, just for variety. And I could even touch that into that when it's damp. So, oh, that's looking pretty good if I say so myself. So, I think it's pretty much done. Let's see if I can get this. This light is a little hot on this right side. I'm just moving my light again. Oops, sorry, there goes my phone. I'm feeling pretty good about this. Again, we're still getting that glare there. I'm very sorry about that. Oh, you're very welcome, Martha. Thank you for coming. I really